On a warm afternoon in May 1828, the people of Nuremberg went about their errands when a boy appeared at the edge of the square, walking like a foal finding its legs. His clothes were ill-fitting and stained, his boots too new and stiff for the shuffle he made across the stones. He clutched a folded letter with both hands as if it might float away, and when he lifted his head, the crowd saw a face both young and worn, with eyes that blinked against daylight. He spoke a few odd words, as if tasting them for the first time, and kept repeating that he wished to be a cavalryman like his father. Beyond that, he seemed to understand little of anything. Where he was, how he had come here, what a city even meant. At the guardhouse, they opened the letter. It said the boy's name was Kaspar Hauser, that he had been raised in seclusion, that someone should take him in. No birthplace, no family, no story beyond a few lines that felt less like a guardian's message than a hand eager to be rid of a burden. The officers tried simple questions. How old are you? Where are you from? Do you know what this is? Holding up a candle, a coin, a cup of water. He answered in a child's vocabulary and wanted bread and water more than anything. Meat made him gag. Beer turned his face away. He sat, knees together, hands folded over the letter, a stranger to furniture and the rituals of rooms. Doctors and magistrates studied him the way men study puzzles. He walked poorly, knees stiff, feet flat, as though his muscles had never climbed a stair. Loud noises made him flinch. He slept like an animal cornered, waking at the smallest scrape. When he first saw a mirror, he tapped the glass with a hesitant finger, then laughed with delight. He could write his name, but little else. When asked where he had lived, he said, "In a little place," and cupped his hands together as if holding a box. Nuremberg, with its markets and bells and gossiping streets, wrapped itself around the mystery. Children peered from doorways to catch sight of the newcomer. Scholars argued in taverns about nature and nurture, about innocence grown wild in the dark. Pious citizens saw proof that the soul begins gentle and is bruised by the world. Skeptics muttered that pity is easily fooled. Kaspar learned in public, a life unfolding like a newspaper, each day a new column for people to argue over. He learned quickly. Letters became words, words became sentences. A shy voice became a story the city could not stop listening to. In that story, he had been kept in darkness almost his whole life, fed just enough to live, never taught a name or prayer, never allowed to see the sun. Then, suddenly, a man led him out, eyes bandaged, steps counted, until he stood blinking in Nuremberg and was told to ask for a captain. There were gaps wide enough to drive a wagon through, but his awkward body gave the tale a terrible plausibility. You could see the cell in the angle of his back, in the way he chewed bread as if learning it. Fame followed, as it always does. Curiosity, argument, opportunity. Visitors came to test him like a coin, tapping for false notes. A professor held up colored cards and marveled at how he startled at red. A lady gave him a peach, and he examined the fuzz as if the fruit might purr. Musicians played, and he cried without shame. There was money in Kaspar, and there was principle in him. In October 1829, a servant found him staggering, blood in his hair. Kaspar said a masked man had struck him in the cellar. The city tightened around him, fearful that whoever had hidden him now wanted him dead. Whispers rose, too. Had he hurt himself to keep attention from cooling? Those who adored him felt the first small chill of doubt. Those who doubted him felt the first small warmth of pity. From then on, every bruise, every fever, every argument around him sounded like a verdict. He was moved from house to house, passed between guardians who alternately loved him and wearied of him. With some, he was affectionate and eager to please. With others, he lied or sulked and feigned ignorance when it suited him. He was a young man learning the common tools of life, pride, shame, vanity, and he did not always use them well. When he discovered that handwriting could persuade as surely as tears, his notes grew theatrical. When he learned that newspapers could turn rumor into cement, he became the subject of pieces that were less about a boy than about the ideas men wanted to prove with him. There were moments that disarmed the hardest skeptics. He remembered nothing of the sky before Nuremberg and would stare at clouds as if watching a stage. He was thrilled by the feel of grass under bare feet. He asked whether the moon ever grew tired from all its climbing. These were not the habits of a practiced con artist. They were the reactions of someone who had arrived late to the ordinary and found it astonishing. As the years passed, politics climbed aboard. Nobles from Baden read with alarm the pamphlets hinting that Kaspar might be their lost heir, the infant rumored to have died, perhaps hidden to clear a path for another line. Family trees were brought out and dusted. Servants remembered lullabies they might never have heard. A rumor hardened into theory, and theory into parties lined up like armies, each claiming him or rejecting him. In December 1833, the last act arrived with an awful neatness. Kaspar returned to his lodging, pale and shaking, hands pressed to his stomach, blood slipping through his fingers. He said a stranger had met him in the Ansbach court garden and promised a revelation about his mother if Kaspar would follow. There, the stranger stabbed him and fled, leaving a small purse with a note whose words felt like theater, a riddle, a name, a hint of foreign travel. Doctors fought the infection. 3 days later, he died. He was 21. Even in death, the questions would not settle. Some insisted an assassin had silenced him before he could prove royal blood. Others said he had stabbed himself to summon sympathy and misjudged the depth. The note, they argued, matched his hand. But the angle of the wound, replied others, suggested an attacker. For every claim, there was a counterclaim. For every witness, a shadow behind the curtain. What remained was a life that never found its shape before it was cut short. Long after the grave cooled, investigators kept worrying the case. Hair and garments were saved in drawers. In the late 20th century, and again in the 21st, scientists compared traces believed to be Kaspar's with genetic material from descendants of the Baden line. One study seemed to rule out a connection, another left a door ajar. Even the most careful results carried the same old shrug. Inconclusive. Like the boy himself, the evidence would not entirely belong to anyone. So return to the square, to the first image that began everything. A boy blinking against sunlight, holding a letter like a raft. Whether prince or pretender, experiment or accident, he walked into the world as if stepping out of a cave. He learned the alphabet as a rescue rope, and the way people lean closer to a mystery than to any truth plainly told. He learned, too late, that fame is a wind that will lift you only until it drops you. Kaspar Hauser remained suspended between pity and suspicion, claimed by both and owned by neither. To believe him is to imagine a cruelty so methodical it built a person in darkness. To doubt him is to imagine a performance so sustained it fooled physicians and the soft-hearted poor who gave him bread. The mystery lives because both possibilities offend us. We do not wish to think anyone could be kept like an animal. We do not wish to think anyone could pretend to have been. And so the story endures, stubborn as rumor and as sharp as grief. He is buried in Ansbach under a headstone that reads, with a cruelty that might be honesty, "Here lies Kaspar Hauser, a riddle of his time." The riddle is not only who he was or what was done to him, but how quickly we turned a human being into a screen for our arguments. He wanted a father and a saddle and a simple life. He received debate, surveillance, and a knife in a winter garden. That part of the tale requires no theory at all. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.